Konbanwa, good evening. That's what we say in Japanese. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Those who are waiting, please come and join and take seats. You'll be very comfortable very soon, no problems. I think the welcome that I'm going to extend to you is literally warm, not just in terms of sentiments, but with 46 degrees centigrade outside. I think even the Mitsubishi air conditioning might not be able to handle this Ahmedabad heat. Of course, I know they are tough sumos and they can do anything. Minasan, let's welcome amidst a warm round of applause our distinguished chief guest, Mr. Eisuke Shiozaki, the Managing Director and Chairman of the Mitsubishi Corporation India Private Limited. And it is a very special evening for us today because AMA, its Japan Center, and the Indo-Japan Friendship Association have had a very special relationship that we have shared over the years with Mitsubishi Corporation India. As you know, what came to be acknowledged as one of the country's first and finest Japan centers, which showcases Japan in India. We were very proud that the AMA's Japan Information and Study Center came to be acknowledged. But then, this would not have been possible, as we all know, but for the very large-hearted and magnificent support that came to be extended to us by Mitsubishi Corporation India and its wholly owned subsidiary, Metal One India Corporation, way back in 2015. In fact, it was almost 4 years ago, in 2014, a little after this time when the interactions between Mitsubishi and AMA started, and which culminated into this very monumental experience of setting up the Japan Center, of which we are so proud of. I'm very happy on behalf of the Ahmedabad Management Association and the Indo-Japan Friendship Association to welcome Mr. Shiozaki, along with his colleagues who have also come from Delhi, Mr. Ando and Mr. Chopra from Kolkata, all very senior leaders of Mitsubishi, on their first official visit to AMA and the Japan Center. Thank you very much, sir, for coming and being with us this evening. And as you will see, he is a very fine and articulate speaker, and he's going to share some wonderful thoughts on a very absorbing subject of experiences of Japanese entities in India. Some points to ponder. Well, Gujarat has been the focus of Japanese business in India for quite some time, and I think it's very appropriate that we have Shiozaki-san talk to us on this very, very important subject. Friends, Shiozaki-san, if I have to introduce him, he started his career with Mitsubishi way back in the mid-80s, in 1985. And thereafter, he has actually been traveling globally. He's been in the United States, he's been in Europe, he's of course been there in Japan in very key positions. And now, apart from heading India, he also holds a very prestigious position of being the Senior Vice President of Mitsubishi Global, and has held several important positions for the entire Southeast Asia as well. So I'm sure his sharing with you this evening his thoughts on Japanese experiences in India. Of course, he's been here for just about around a year, but I believe that's more than enough for him to be able to give a lot of insights. And I do not wish to take much time except for the fact that it's always heartening to see that, sir, even on a hot summer evening, when people would not want to get out of their houses or go straight from offices to their home, we have such a fine audience that speaks volumes for the fact that we love Japan, and people have high regard and respect for Mitsubishi, and obviously its captain as well. So friends, on behalf of all of us, may I take this opportunity of requesting the President of the Ahmedabad Management Association, Mr. Rajiv Mehta, to please present a memento to Shiozaki-san. Abaj, please, he'll give it. And we want to do the honors, because this truly symbolizes, sir, Ahmedabad in all its respects. I would take this opportunity of presenting flowers, which always, say the best language in terms of our affection and feelings to each other. We're also very happy to have the business head of Mitsubishi, Mr. Ando, here, and may I request the Vice President of the Indo-Japan Friendship Association, Malti Ben Mehta, to please welcome Ando-san with a very traditional handicraft of Gujarat, of the celebrated Toran of Vadnagar, as we call it. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we're also very happy that from Kolkata, we are having Mr. Rohit Chopra, who is the head of CSR projects of Mitsubishi in India. He's also here. We would like to extend him a very traditional welcome. And may I request Mr. Sandeep Shah, the treasurer of the Indo-Japan Friendship Association, to please present this to Mr. Chopra. And as a small memory of our Japan Center's visit, we would like to present something which you would like to take home, and seeing that you will remember our ukiyo-e paintings that we have so proudly displayed in the center. And I would request our graphic artist and designer, who in his rightful position is also the Honorary Joint Secretary of our association, Mr. Nilesh Dave, to present this graphic tiles design to Shiozaki-san. Okay, lovely. And may I also request Dr. Mukund Patel, our Chief Information Officer, to present this ukiyo-e design to Ando-san, please. Sorry. Yes, I think we'll give him something different to carry. So please take this with us. Thank you. And may I invite our Japanese language teacher, Ms. Dipti Chitale, to please come here quickly. And Dipti will present this to Shiozaki-san, with, of course, a greeting in Japanese as well. Thank you. Well, friends, it's time that I request Shiozaki-san to speak. But before that, I wish to acknowledge something which I feel the entire Ahmedabad and Gujarat should feel proud of. Well, before 10 years, I have friends like Mr. Ashish Soparkar. I can name him because he's a leading, eminent businessman and industrialist here. And if I were to ask him that, could you imagine that in Ahmedabad, 10 years ago, if we had a Japanese business tycoon like Mr. Shiozaki, and we were to have a dozen youngsters, eminent businessmen, professionals, working executives in their own right, join for an evening session and have 45 minutes of chaste Japanese interaction. I think you would say, you must be joking, Mukesh Patel. And as a matter of fact, this would not have been possible. But today, it did happen. And in fact, we're very proud because after the similar experience Madam Akie Abe got when she interacted with our Japanese language students, and she was so happy, she even sang a song. You have to sing a song finally with them before we depart. May I request our Japanese language students who interacted with him and who are sitting in the hall, just please stand up. Just stand up for a second. Yes, you are. And I'm going to ask you something extempore, right? I would like you to sing 2 lines of a Japanese song, Anona, in honor of welcoming Mr. Shiozaki and his team from Mitsubishi. Would you like to do that instantly? Just decide what words you want to catch up and do it. And then I'll give the stage to him. Or if not collectively, a few of you can, right? Good, lovely, lovely. Thank you so much. Arigatou gozaimashita. And it's time we all give a round of applause as I invite Mr. Shiozaki to speak this evening. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for Mr. Patel, Mr. Mehta. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I haven't learned any Hindu songs yet. The only thing I can sing is Jama Kana, nandakena. You know the national anthem, Jana Kama. Yeah, but I'm just trying to learn at the moment. So give me a little more time, and next time I'll sing the whole national anthem for you. Ne? All right. Well, thank you so much for taking this opportunity. Today, what I would like to talk about is exactly the experiences of Japanese companies in India. But as he confessed, I've been only here for 1 year. And you know 1 year is not enough to learn India. There's no way. But let me just share with you what I have so far kind of felt about what is the issues between Japanese companies being successful in India, and what are the changes that's happening. And I'm going to try to go through it, but there's a lot of words I think it's going to be too small to read. Just get the flavor of it. The details are not going to be so important. Okay? So the things I'm going to talk about is I'm just going to go briefly 5 minutes about introducing myself and Mitsubishi. And then I'm going to talk about the Japanese companies in India, but I'm going to look into the history and see what's the lesson learned from this. I'm going to go into basically talking about the remaining of the time. I'm just going to talk about really 3 things. One is tactics, and one is culture, the company culture, and finally the mindset. So those are the only 3 things that I like to just refer to tonight. All right, just my profile. As he mentioned briefly, I was born in '62 and went to New York when John F. Kennedy died. I don't remember a thing. But back then, New York, according to my father, was not a very good place to live. I mean, it was still a lot of crimes and so forth. And I think a lot of things have changed since then. I went back to Japan, then I returned to Chicago in '72, and America was going back now. It was gaining the momentum. It was a bicentennial days, and so that it was celebrating 200 years of the birth. Now, 200 years of birth, I mean, India and Japan, we're like 2,000 or 3,000 or whatever. But anyway, joined Mitsubishi in '85, and I had my first assignment in New York from '89 to '95 during the Gulf War days. I was in the island in the Caribbean, so I was watching the TV when the people are fighting the war, and that was very strange days. I returned back to Japan and went to '99 to Düsseldorf, Germany. And of course, I didn't see the World Trade Center, but the news came and it was a huge shock, as everyone must know. Returned back to Japan, and now, since last year, I've been in New York. So I think I know a little bit about cross-culture. But as for Mitsubishi is concerned, I think they know, or Mitsubishi knows, cross-culture. We work in around 90 countries. And we have offices, about 200 offices around the world. And I think we do this cross-culturing and interactions everywhere in the world at the moment. And I think that's our bread and butter for the time being. Mitsubishi in India. As you know, Mitsubishi handles from, let's say, automobiles to LNG, lots of things, but few things which we do in Mitsubishi that I like to just mention. We will be starting our imports of LNG to India from possibly the end of this year to next year. We have a joint venture with Isuzu in making Isuzu cars. Anyone riding Isuzu here? No. Okay. Only Mitsubishi cars. Ne? Okay. Next time go around, look for Isuzu, please. What about cup noodle? I know, have you gone to Indigo Jet? You know, yeah? Ne? All right. This is what we do in joint venture. So these are the activities we have in India. So this is just the introduction. I'm going to get into the discussion about the Japanese entities in India and how I see it for the time being. I'm going to look into the history, but don't, like I said, it's going to be in fine print, so don't look at the too much in details. But India, from a historical point of view, I see just in 2 pages. One from the independence to '91, and it's '91 onward. So it's going to be just 2 pages. And I'm not sure whether this is a correct definition, but that's how I interpret it. These are the things that happened during the, from the independence to the '91. And I'm not going to go into the details. This line is accumulation of the GDP, which just slowly evaluated back in those days. Here's the picture which I like you to watch, but names are not important. I've listed the successful foreign companies who are succeeding in India, the companies who have published the numbers so that I can track down, and listed the names and plotted where they have when they have entered India. As maybe you can see that this first part, and the most, as you may know, the most successful foreign company is in India is Unilever by far margin. And there's Colgate's, there's Nestle's, Cummins, Siemens. These companies were here before the independence or just right after the independence. And they've been doing the Make in India for the last 50, 60, 70 years. Whereas you don't see one single Japanese company, I mean, maybe small companies, I'm not talking about small ones, but I'm talking about major companies. You won't see one single Japanese company except Maruti Suzuki. And this came in 1981. 1981 is a year where India financed from IMF. And from the Japanese company point of view, there was no way in the world that we would go into India and do a Make in India at that time of the period of time. I mean, I was still a student back then, but I'm sure that if I was in the corporation that there's not going to be any chance of going to India when IMF is still financing. Suzuki did it, and it paid off. And this is not the story that I'm going to tell you today. I think everyone knows about Maruti Suzuki's stories. But all I'm saying is that when you plot it, there's only one single company from Japan in this period of time. Now, the next page is from 1990 onwards. And a lot of things happened, but this plotted line is the GDP, which obviously the numbers are not important, but you see this sharp rise in the GDP. We better start recognizing this country is, I think, the atmosphere that has created, even within Japan. However, as you may be able to see, real entrance of Japanese companies into India comes in around in mid-90s. So companies like Honda, Canon, companies like Daikin, these companies have entered India in the mid-90s. Samsung, Hyundai, big winners in India. They're also in the mid-90s. And you're trying to figure out why. And I guess my answer is that all the attention of the Japanese companies in the early 90s and 80s to early 90s were focused in China. Japanese company focused in China and didn't have the resources to come to India. I think Hyundai and Samsung, maybe I'm wrong, but they were struggling to enter China, and maybe that's the motivation to come to India much quickly than the Japanese did. But anyway, having said that, Mitsubishi at the below, we also made several investments in India in mid-90s. We had some shares in Mahindra, which we gave up. If we still have it, we don't even have to work now, I think, with the stock market price. So I think there's a lot of lesson learned from that. But anyway, the mid-90s was the first wave of the Japanese companies entering to India. Now, the second wave comes in around 2005-ish. Maybe you haven't heard about Yakulto. I don't know. Yeah, the drink, the little, yes. Yakulto is from 2005. Panasonic, Unicharm, Nikon, those are the companies, Japanese companies entering in 2005. So that's the second wave of generation. And you can see the second wave coming because I think the first wave was catching the trend or catching the forecast or catching the atmosphere that this country is going to grow. GDP wasn't growing that much back in the mid-90s, but certainly the companies were looking for some markets after China, whereas 2005, the second wave, they clearly saw this country is going to be booming. And that's why the second entrance was there. Mitsubishi only re-entered, I should say, into India around after 2012, 13, 14, to be honest with you. Of course, Mitsubishi have been doing a lot of trading business. So we do waterborne trading of machinery equipments to shrimps, to lot of those items. However, I'm talking about investing in India, making India, and we have really not done much. Even we couldn't even enter India in the 2005, 6, around that period of time. We had lots of tax issues with the Indian government, and that really demotivated us in really entering this country. So we're behind the second generation. So this is the first wave, and this is the second wave of Japanese company. But as for Mitsubishi, it's the third wave. And what I'm trying to say here is that, okay, Mitsubishi is rather late in coming here. We are still have a lot to learn. But the first wave or the second wave finally is accumulating 10, 20 years of experiences in India. And I think that is important for going to the next slides. And again, don't read you will not be able to read it. But the point I'm making here is I've listed from 1 to 20 of the successful foreign companies. And you know that Maruti Suzuki, for instance, is the most successful in the listing companies, and they entered in 1981. And all this, I'm not going to go into details, but all I'm trying to say here is that the real success stories, the listing companies I have listed on the top, maybe it doesn't show, okay. But anyway, Hindustan Unilever, Bosch, Ambuja Cement, Siemens, Nestle's, these are all 50-year-old, 60-year-old companies, and that's why they're, I wouldn't say that's why, but they're on the top. Japanese companies or Korean companies who have spent 20 years are finally coming to a very recognizable profit margins. Whereas on the last row, for example, like Panasonic's or Yakulto or Kokuyos, they've been here for about 10 years. Half of them are still in red. So my question is, why does it take so much time in India? Why does it take, for a Japanese company to be successful, why does it take so much time? In the past, and I was told when I was leaving Japan, the time to be spent, the reason for not being able to succeed in India was largely due to lack of infrastructure and bureaucracy in the government. That was really the two statements that I have at least heard back in the old days of the reason why the Japanese companies were struggling to succeed. But now, the reasons that there was questionnaires asked to each companies, and there's several papers by the consultants, and they're analyzing this, and I think they're saying, what they're saying is that Japanese companies takes lots of time to investigate, lots of time to investigate, and when they come in and start doing the actual business, oftentimes the analysis from the investigation and actual whatever happens quite differs. It doesn't resemble what the investigations resulted in. So no matter how much time or the money you spent, it was very difficult for Japanese companies to actually grasp what this country is. Why? I think my 1-year experience, when I talked to, let's say, when I asked the same question to 5 different Indian persons, I get 5 different answers. And I think this is the image of what I get, is this is a commercial by a map company called Zenrin, where you ask something and I get 2 different answers. Which means when Mitsubishi starts wanting investment and investigate into India, you ask questions, which generates more questions, and then you keep generating questions. And so you don't come to a real good comfort level of really trying to figure out what this is all about. And I think Japanese companies firstly hesitate in not having a clear answer, but the second point is that I think we just try to kind of close our eyes and let's just go with it to some extent. And I think there's a lots of time consumption in this learning curve. So I guess point is, maybe why don't we focus the investigation? Companies who have succeeded in India, Sony and Unicharm is some examples that I'm listing. And let's not get into details, but for example, as for Unicharm, they have many, many different products. Unicharm have many different products. They only selected baby diapers. So they just concentrated only on one segment. Sony, they have a lot of, as you know, many, many different kinds of appliances. They only concentrated on one single point, which is image or sound quality. That's the only area that they really focused. And I think that is paying off. The focusing of the investigation is, I think, paying off. So, key to success. If I'm Mitsubishi, or if I'm a Japanese company, and if I want to enter India, and if I'm going to ask the same question and I'm going to have 10 different answers, let's try to focus a little bit. And when I say focus, I'll give you one example. Let's regionally focus. So, I'm going to talk about regional focusing. These are company names which Mitsubishi has joint ventures in other parts of Southeast Asia. For instance, our biggest success story is in Thailand. We have a Isuzu joint venture, and it's a huge success for us. For example, with Mitsubishi Motors, we have a joint venture. This is in Indonesia. Mitsubishi Elevators, we have a joint venture in Vietnam. But these entrants of these markets are all divided by countries. When we enter with Isuzu in Thailand, we don't investigate Korea or we don't investigate China. We investigated deeply into Thailand, and that's the focusing. I'm just giving you some examples of focusing. So, when we talk about India, what I learned is GDP, average per capita, $1,700. Literacy rate, 74%. Poverty rate, 21%. So, is this the real picture of India? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you probably know. But this is whole India on average. And I don't think this really represents where, for instance, if I want to sell my elevators, or if I want to go to Isuzu to market my Isuzu cars, I don't think I'm going to use these numbers to figure out what kind of marketing I should be doing. If the poverty literacy rate is 74%, I'm not going to put any language. I'm going to put probably our Japanese animation manga or something for people to understand. So I think there's a big distinct difference in terms of focusing where you're going to market or where you're going to enter. And so focusing is probably going to be really what to focus is, of course, is a very difficult point to decide. But I think that is something that we have to really, as of how Mitsubishi is concerned, have to really focus and narrow down to understand part of India. And I think that's going to be the start for us. Just to give you an example of why we think that approach is correct is because As you know, this is a map of India, but there are all the ASEAN countries from population point of view, or even from the GDP point of view, is inside of India. So when we discussed, let's say I want to go into establishing a Isuzu car and I succeeded in Thailand, why don't I just go to Rajasthan because it has the same population? I mean, I don't have to look everywhere else. I mean, I think maybe that's part of the strategy. Even the cities itself is GDP in similar. For example, let's pick, let's say Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam's GDP is nearly equal to Bangalore. So if we're going to do something in Ho Chi Minh, why don't we do the same in Bangalore to begin with? Let's not just go to Bangalore and Delhi and Chennai. And I think that's where I think our focus should be. So after narrowing the focused area or focus sectors, what's next? I'm going to talk about cultures. And this is something I think I can talk a little bit more positively because I think Japanese companies have started to learn about the cultures in India. Now, there's a lot of success stories for Mitsubishi within the Southeast Asian countries. Like I mentioned to you in Thailand and Vietnam, we have a lot of success stories there. And we have defined what the reasons are, and there's several reasons like respect for Japanese technologies or wanting to incorporate the Japanese management system. But I like to focus on this Japanese speaking staffs, local language speaking Japanese staffs. This, as we see, at least I see when I see the success joint ventures we have in those countries in Southeast Asia, there's lots of these Japanese speaking national staffs who is really climbing up the ladder and contributing to the success of the joint ventures. So, how does India stand to this? I know the numbers you cannot read, but I'll just read. Foreign students in Japan. Foreign students in Japan. By far, China sends the most students to Japan. In 2016, they have sent 107,000 students from China to Japan. 107,000. At the same time, India sent, do you know how many? 1,200. So it's 107,000 against 1,200. But even between those countries, there's a lot of countries who sends in big chunks. Vietnam is number 2 in sending 60,000 students to Japan. 60,000 students. Nepal sends 21,000. I thought their population is lower than 21,000, but they send 21,000 students. I'm joking, yo. I'm joking. But anyway, these numbers means a lot because they not just speak the language, but they understand the cultures and they spread the words and they narrows down both sides of the cultures. And that's how I see the success, key success in the joint ventures within what Mitsubishi has in Southeast Asia. The other chart represents foreign students studying in Japan. Foreign students studying in Japan. Once again, China is the biggest. Foreign students studying Japanese. Just simply Japanese, everywhere, anywhere in the world. So we have 10, 15 students today, all inclusive, yeah? China has 953,000 people studying Japanese. 953,000. Second place is Indonesia, 745,000. South Korea, 550,000. While we go down the list, India, including these 15 students today, 24,000. 24,000 opposed to China's 953,000. But the amazing point is, China, out of the same population as India, basically, China has one student learning Japanese per every 7 people in the population. Every 7, one, oh, no, sorry, one more thing. 7 students per 10,000 people in China. 7 out of 10,000 is learning Japanese. Okay? India, 0.18 per 10,000. So you are very, very valuable. Well, thank you very much. But all I'm trying to say is, okay, this is just a snapshot of 2016. But between China and India, of course, China is the top place and India is in the 12th ranking. A lot of the countries in between is where Mitsubishi is succeeding. The countries like Australia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, these are the countries where Mitsubishi is really succeeding in joint ventures and making production facilities. And I think this Japanese-speaking staffs, employees, does help the bridge of the cultural differences. And it's vice versa, of course. But I think this is one big success stories that we have learned from southeastern countries, which we would certainly would like to apply into India as a country as well. So, last message from this slide is, to be very honest with you, everyone speaks 2 languages at most of people, I think, in India, because you have the local language and you have the English. And I really admire that. Huh? 3? Hindi. 3. And I feel that you don't feel the necessity of going to one more foreign language because you have plenty of the capability of speaking different languages. But I think in order to go global, or at least to integrate with the global companies, that one more foreign language other than English would really, really go a long way. It doesn't have to be Japanese, it could be anything of your choice. But I think because in Japan, Japanese is the only people who only speaks Japanese. There's no other countries that speaks Japanese. So we try English because that's the hardest we can go. But we think that English is have to be a basis of our battle within the globalization. But within Japan, I think the second foreign language is more highly, I shouldn't say respected, but more valued. Although a lot of Japanese haven't been successful, including myself, I think the importance or the value of this one more foreign language, I think I would like India to kind of start incorporating, because I think the future for India is going to be in par and aligning with these global companies and global networks around the world. Okay, so if having said all this, these cultural differences, we say cultural differences, but particularly on the company culture. Of course, in the past, there was a lot of difference. Japanese loves trust and monocultural, but you have this jagad, which I'm still trying to learn, but I like it actually. I mean, I like this concept, but it's a cultural difference, which we used to have we used to feel a big gap between these two cultures. But as the business grows, I think there's something is starting to narrow down. The cultural difference is starting to narrow down. Japanese loves lifetime employment in the past, a little bit in the past. Seniorities. And Japanese always tries to make generalists. I mean, that was the tendency when I joined the company. I think Indians go for more specialist type of creating a company culture. And of course, there's a lot of contract employments in this country. That still probably continues. But it is narrowing down because, and I'm not sure whether you agree to this or not, but the Japanese company culture, for instance, the terminology called work-life balance. I have heard this in India as well. I have started to hear about this work-life balance. Performance-based. This is starting to hear. And Japan has started to, well, maybe started a little bit long ago, but now it's finally fitting in. The self-decision or the professionalism, these things, I think there's going to be some kind of a narrowing down of these two company cultures. And the reason why is because we both have to fight with the international global standards and global practices and global companies. So I think it's no-brainer that maybe we don't intentionally try to narrow it down, but we are narrowing down. And I think we will be surprised when we start really thinking about it, that maybe we're talking about a same type of culture heading to the same type of directions. So this is what I had heard in India. There's a movie called Three Idiots, which it was a long movie, so I fell asleep about one hour, and I haven't seen the rest of the movie, but I heard this is a movie about Indian wants to do something, deciding by yourself. And I think that's the similar culture where the Japanese young generation is going. I entered Mitsubishi without really thinking too much. I mean, just kind of entering and see what happens. But now because my father was a salaryman, so I thought I would be the salaryman, and I didn't really think too much hard about it. But I think there's a lot of younger generation in Japan, which is similar to these three idiots, thinking what they really want to do by themselves. So there's entrepreneurs are starting to born in Japan as well. So if the company cultures are narrowing, I think the cultures should blend well in the future. So what's left? There's this, like I said, blending cultures means there's some similarities. I think Indian companies are how do you pronounce it? Hierarchical. You know, relationship with the boss is very, where I see it, it's very formal. I mean, I don't see them just going together and having a drink or something. I don't see that. Relationship with subordinates is not as close, but there's some formal relation to it, and I think that's similar to Japan. Sense of ownership of work. I was very surprised. I thought before coming to India, everyone leaves at 5:30. No one, I mean, at least my company, no one leaves. No Indian leaves at 5:30, and this is really, really a good surprise for me. I mean, I'm not trying to say we're a black company, but they work until they finish the job. That's how I'm taking this. I don't like this part, conservativeness at meetings. I thought Indians would raise hands and just shoot out questions and opinions, but at least in my company, I don't see it too much happening. And I'm not sure in the rest of the companies, but in Japanese companies, this is very similar. I mean, in Mitsubishi, it's so conservative. I should not say this in front of the camera, but anyway, all I'm saying is that these are the similarities, the silos. The Japanese companies loves verticals, the silos, and I think Indian companies some companies operate in that way, and I think there's similarities. Okay, but it is changing. The difference, let's say, quick answers to slow decisions. Mitsubishi we are very confident in making slow decisions. But once we make decisions, we keep promises. But that's our confidence. Quick answers for Indians. You ask some question, instantly you get an answer. And it's amazing how confident they answer to you. And I haven't proved whether they were right or wrong, but this is very, very, I think it's important to show your confidence to fight against, global cultures. I think this is very, very important factors, but let's be more precise if we can. And all these things are still differences. There's no cultures which going to be identical, right? So these are differences that I think we can overtake. So what I'm saying to here is that company cultures, because the world is changing, because we have the internet, because we have such a communication network, I think, and because we have to fight against the global companies, our company cultures is going to slowly narrow down the differences. It's not going to be the same, but the differences are narrowing. So what's left? I think it's the mindset. The mindset. Well, I'm not sure whether you have seen this picture before, but this is not probably, but this is, the question is, you were told to put green on the circle and red on the square. And probably the mindset difference is the left-hand side is what the result from the Indians would do in one day, whereas the right-hand side is the result of how Japanese do it in 1 week. And I think this is, but we are laughing about it, but I think we have to start recognizing that maybe this is not correct now. I think it's this mindset that keeps us telling us that, okay, Indians are always like this, and the Japanese is always like this. But I think it's changing, because I know my daughter would write like on the left-hand side. And so there's no question that things are changing. And I think it's the mindset that is really preventing a lot of things to still change. So I have only 3 more slides. Let me just give you 2 slides of the image, the mindset, what the mindset change can bring. As seen from the pictures, you can tell that we're talking about food. And the vertical line is the freshness, and the horizontal line is the days, number of the days. So when the potato starts after being harvested, obviously if the days are short, the freshness is there. What I'm trying to get at is, as the days progresses, the freshness starts to deteriorate, and you start losing taste, you start losing textures. But okay, I think you can be satisfied if the price is cheaper. I think in Japan, we have this mindset that we want this to look as nice as possible, and it has to be wrapped and look so fresh that this is still a mindset issue, because more days you come, the nutrition loss is starting to happen, and the moisture loss is going to start happening. And what this brings you to is, food loss. And food loss means you're just wasting, you're just dumping this. And dumping means, of course, food loss is a result of the oxidations of the bacteria, but food loss is something you can prevent if your mindset is starting to change. I think Japan started to change its mindset because, of course, Japan in the earlier days didn't care about the nutrition or the moisture, but did care about the food loss. Japanese have a word called mottainai, which means we don't want to waste things. And I think that created this mindset that, okay, let's not dump things, then let's start utilizing things, and let's start making things more fresh, more neat, more clean. So it's a backward integration from this mindset of this food loss. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a sense of this freshness is going to be a value for India. It's not something as you're being taught, but it's like you feel that this is going to be starting to be a value because you don't want to waste food, or because maybe you don't want to eat something unhealthy and go into hospitals. Let's not just look at the price, but let's look at the texture. Let's look at the moisture. And I think these are the things which is going to start changing. And the reason why I'm saying this is because Mitsubishi is in the cold chain logistics system. We do the cold chain business in India. And usually, if the mindset of the consumers want fresh food, then the whole value chain covers from the farm to the consumers. But in India, the cold chain really covers the middle part, the food processing part, largely. I wouldn't say zero, but largely the agri-products or whatever the products are brought into the warehouse, and then the food processing starts, and that's where the cold chain starts. And the cold chain ends at the retail, but it doesn't go into the final consumer. So occasionally, I'm just trying to say as an example. And I think the mindset changes these things. Mindset of, okay, let's not dump food, or let's eat some healthy food. That's the change in the mindset of the consumer, which backward integrates and making sure that the cold chain logistics covers from the farm produce all the way into consumers. And this is where I think the Japanese companies can really contribute by giving technologies of cold chain logistics or networking, IT, AI kind of technologies. I think that's where the Indian companies and Japanese companies starts to blend well. And so it's all about this.
Okay, friends, we'll end up on our time. And thank you very much. Rajiv, would you like to say something? Please, he will have the last word, a vote of thanks, Mr. Rajiv Mehta. But friends, before he does that, why would we not all stand up to give a warm round of applause to him? This has been an amazingly wonderful evening. What a pleasure it was. Sir, you have come in all the heat. Now you'll have to come in the good weather times as well. Please, Rajiv bhai.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation about the tips in India. I'll use your last line of Three Idiots. What we are doing, our tactic is to create a culture which is pro-Japanese. And if you see the mindset and if you see the figures, you presented that in 2016, there were 1,236 students who are learning Japanese, and we are proud to mention that 500 plus students have learned Japanese from AMA. And through your support in the Japan Study Circle, So this is what we have done, and we are creating this culture, and we are moving towards the trend. So it is very good that you came and motivated us further. I am really thankful for that. And I look forward to have many more interactions and involvements in creating the culture and the mindset, especially in Gujarat. And as you said, the same strategy we are following, it is the regional, and so we are Ahmedabad Management Association. So if you see percentage in Ahmedabad about the knowledge and opinion and also interest in Japan, you see the numbers here, and we are very happy for that. I thank all of you to be here together with us today to have this wonderful session. Thank you very much, and I thank all the people here. Thanks.